Brad Taste is a music reaction creator whose entire content is literally just reacting to music and making a lot of money doing so. He had a flourishing fanbase for many years until things got bad back in summer 2024, and since then his entire life has been on a rapid downward spiral as controversy after controversy keeps building around the guy. What I initially thought was just some stupid, overblown, lowbrow internet drama that I despise ended up turning into a cautionary tale of addiction and toxicity, and mixed that with a lack of self-control, was a recipe for disaster eventually. So to give a quick rundown on Brad Taste, he reviews music on his YouTube channel, and that's really it. He got his start online back in the mid-2010s uploading random shitposty kinds of music similar to Joji's Pink Eye project, and even produced music under the name DJ Business during his SoundCloud phase in 2017 before changing that to Bradley L, then going by Bradley Lemman after all this. In September 2017, he would start to review music online as it was a newish landscape that was just barely starting to take off in the YouTube mainstream, and this would prove to be a good move as for the next few years he would continue to review songs, this time streaming while doing it in order to engage with his audience directly and grow his fanbase. Brad's also had small situations go down, like this one time when he listened to a song called Snake Eyes by artist Demon Dice, who is actually a popular VTuber by the name Mori Calliope, and hated it so much he got his fanbase to make accounts on the website Album of the Year, make a listing solely for that song and nothing more, and raid the website in question to give it the lowest rating possible at his command. This news would make its way to Mori's Discord, and so the users on there would make their own accounts to counter-raid and giving it the highest rating possible as it became a small rating war between the two fanbases. The website mods would sort everything out eventually, and honestly, it's a little bit funny in my opinion as it's nothing super drastically malicious but rather just very spiteful people and Brad and his fanbase and a small internet pissing match started by it. However, this act of his audience being rather active in a direct and toxic way will become a reoccurring theme here, and you'll soon see why. Now, Brad's fanbase rate bombing things he doesn't like would be a constant pattern, as there was another time where on the Album of the Year Discord server they would notice he rated the mixtape Roller Coaster by Ryan Bennis badly, so fans would immediately start to raid the ratings and review bomb it, and given that Brad has ordered them to do this before, shows that they're okay being toxic on their own terms, in turn fostering a very vocally toxic fanbase. It gets better though, as when users are going on about how they don't like him and his fans, Brad would chime in himself as he was a lurker and start to get mad at people for talking bad about him and throw a small fit in the process. Eventually he would take his review down and say another fan was doing the same, and while again it was a somewhat small situation, it's obvious that despite in starting this toxic fanbase, it's very easy to get a reaction out of Brad whenever people say mean things about him. Brad also had this reoccurring beef with singer Rodney Radke of the band Falling in Reverse, and while there's a bunch of tweets of them arguing between each other, I feel that these two on screen sum things up between them pretty well if you ask me, showing just how argumentative his nature is in general. Now eventually, this toxicity going on between him and his fanbase would start to spill over as he started to become known online for generally just being a toxic person whose fans enable him and vice versa. He'd eventually respond to these claims, and instead of understanding he was part of the issue, he'd put the blame on the audience instead for making him act toxic when it's very obvious he was very equally part of it, as we've seen.
People kind of take it as a personal attack towards me and thinking, oh, he's just giving his opinion, oh, he's just doing this, and they just say some really awful shit back or talk back, and then everything gets ratioed. It's just, I don't know, there's something about it that just feels really off, and it doesn't really feel like... It doesn't feel like it's defending me as much as it is heading towards a direction of just this toxic behavior of, you know, saying one thing and doing the other.
Some people point out that Brad does the same exact stuff in his videos when he's shitting on albums that he reviews and thereby attracts people who will act toxic on their own behalf, and that makes perfect sense as if someone sees their favorite content creator treating something like trash, they'll be influenced to do and act the same. It's a monkey see, monkey do dilemma going on here, and so after more comments of similar nature would appear, Brad would make a community tab post saying how he's realized that he himself is also overly toxic and that he's made a community that expects this in return and that he needs to fix this somehow. He even mentions a fault of his own when after learning someone liked a song he disliked, his community started to trash on them, and when they came to him about it, he basically told them to get used to it instead of fixing the issue at hand. He even dove into it himself after seeing them rate his own music poorly and tell them they're pushing their luck, but he says he now realizes this was his fault and he should have not let himself get in the heat of the moment and let this fan get bullied online simply for having different music tastes. Now all this happened in late 2022 to early 2023, and while it's obvious that Brad is toxic himself and so is his audience, someone recognizing the issues going on and trying to fix them is always a good thing. It seemed that he was willing to get his antics under control and start to get his audience under control as well. And even though I personally have the belief that YouTubers aren't solely responsible for what their audience does majority of the time, it was clear in this case in specific his influence was very much a part of how his audience goes about responding and acting out in their own ways. However, soon after this acknowledgement of trying to change his toxic nature, he would soon find himself back on his bullshit again because he simply can't help it. In March 2023, Brad would find himself reviewing a song by artist Jax called Cinderella Snapped, a cheesy little feminist anthem about not needing a man and how women can do things independently. It's a pretty mess song, but the appeal for some people is certainly there, even if it's not my personal taste. But speaking of taste, Brad Taste would heavily dislike the song during his review and would even rate it a 0 out of 100 on Album of the Year. Of course, people are entitled to their opinion on stuff they like or dislike, but what they aren't entitled to is making a TikTok video directly adding Jax in question to harass her simply because he disliked her song. Knowing that he and his audience are toxic, this will lead to his fans directly going after Jax, again simply because they disliked her song, in which Jax herself made a since deleted TikTok of her own defending herself from him and his fan base.
I cried about this last night, and I am not proud of that. Mainly because I am constantly preaching to young girls to be confident, and off camera, I am deeply, deeply, deeply insecure. But social media does not always tell you the full story, and I am not going to pretend like it doesn't hurt when anybody says I'm a horrible singer or all my songs are terrible, and it sucks. But then this morning, my mom sent me this song. I don't know if you guys remember, but Taylor dropped this banger when she got a super nasty review from a famous music critic. This song is obviously genius because Taylor is a classy genius. Here's my favorite T-Swizzle quote where she points out the difference between constructive criticism and just being straight up mean. And when she stood up for herself on this, she also stood for the mental health of aspiring singers and songwriters that she doesn't even know. I hope one day I can lift someone else up the way that Taylor continues to lift me up when I'm having a really bad mental health day in the music business. Also, that guy's video made me about $36 in streaming money, so he's gonna buy me dinner tonight.
This clip is also from Brad's Jax Called Me Out video, even though he was the one who called her out first, showing him being disingenuous with the framing of the situation at hand. He even gets upset that Jax tagging him is causing her fans to go after him now, despite again starting this and going after her to begin with, showing him being completely oblivious to his own actions in similar fashion to how he initially blamed the general toxicity his channel gave off purely on his audience.
I take responsibility for this. Now, I am a little upset with this because it is tagging me, but there's like no reason to do so except for sending people to me. Like, that could have easily been left out.
He would eventually post the so-called apology video after all this went down, but it's not an apology at all, and more so him responding to someone saying he can hate the music but not the person, and this would be the end of that whole situation. The fact he was trying to play victim by complaining how she was sending her audience after his way when he started it first was a notable example of him not being able to keep that same energy when somebody matches him, and trust me, this will be remembered for the future. In April 2023, just a month later, Brad has started to talk about singer Melanie Martinez and the situation surrounding her. To give a quick rundown, in December 2017, a former friend named Timothy Heller would accuse her of sexual assault and while that whole can of worms is its own thing, the public consensus is mostly in Melanie's favor from what I've gathered online. Obviously, there are people who are still against her, and Brad showed he was clearly one of them, and while he would get criticized for this as it all comes down to people's opinion, the way he would respond to this wouldn't be ignoring them outright, as it's not really worth the time or effort to even respond to these people. No, instead he would brag about how much money he was making and that they're a bunch of losers and such, letting that toxicity of his come out once again despite saying he would get it under control.
Dear Melanie Martinez stans, specifically Stan Twitter accounts. You're right, I will probably never be as successful as Melanie Martinez, but no matter how many death threats you send my fiance, no matter how many times you spam and create images of me and her and do all this awful shit, doesn't change the fact that I make more money per year talking garbage, talking shit about your favorite artist than you ever will doing anything productive. Life is not fair. Better learn to deal with that now as opposed to later.
Now this wouldn't just rub Melanie Martinez fans the wrong way, but also people first discovering the guy, as bragging about how much money you're making when responding to people disagreeing with an opinion is frankly childish. Even if they were being toxic to him first, matching that energy despite saying he was going to get his toxicity under control was stupid to do, and add that alongside bragging about his finances, this just made him look like a jackass. Now, he would continue to argue with fans over the next few weeks, which honestly isn't really anything interesting. And after seeing that his video Melanie Martinez that started this all would do good on YouTube and announce as such in a Twitter post of his, he would announce that Timothy actually got into contact with him and they were working together to push the story forward. Now again, despite knowing this is just a toxic mess to be in, Brad would continue to brag about how much money he was making online covering the story, but then he would make the mistake by reacting to his Kiwi Farms page that was made about him. Now at the time, the page was literally barely anything worth of substance. It was literally just the Demon Dice and Melanie Martinez stuff, and as we've seen, they're very tame overall and just make him look out to be like a toxic jackass. Now given there was nothing of interest to be covered about him, he wouldn't run into any issues at the time, but this would cause the users to look into him a lot harder as he was basically instigating him, and if there's one thing you don't do, is instigate a group of people who are known to keep tabs of people online, and that group led to the discovery of a lot more damning and straight up weird things about this guy that we'll continue to see here throughout this video. This would include watching him continue to argue with Melanie Martinez fans despite it being almost a whole month since he made his video and started all this, including even more posts flexing his wealth online to random teenagers that were annoying him. Hell, by the end of April, he would admit that he was obsessed with the entire discourse, hence why he's been arguing about it for almost a month now. And again, given he acknowledged he was toxic and had a toxic fanbase that continued to act like this, showed that he really didn't care so long as he was making money and nothing bad was happening to him. Brad would continue this Melanie Martinez stuff and get into a small beef after reacting to a video defending her by YouTuber The Crow, formerly known as Piper Sweeney. The Crow's video was uploaded back in July 2019, and Brad reacted to it in October 2023, over 4 years later, meaning he was still obsessing over this Melanie Martinez stuff despite it being over half a year since he first talked about it and started to beef with kids on Twitter. The point here really isn't the beef, it was extremely petty and basically just Brad saying the Crow was stupid. It was the fact he was still obsessing over this stuff so much that he was willing to fight with random people online over videos that were almost half a decade old simply because he hates Melanie Martinez that much. Now for the next few months, Brad would move on because even though to outsiders he seemed like a toxic man, his fans didn't care because they were kinda just like him. Again, while I have the opinion that content creators shouldn't be responsible for what their fans do majority of the time, there was a very clear toxic and symbiotic relationship going on here. And given that Brad has gone after Jax, inadvertently got his fanbase a harasser in the process, and didn't really care at all, showed that he wasn't willing to change his toxic ways despite what he said earlier. However, so far Brad has never been at the receiving end of his audience wrath yet, but that was bound to happen sooner or later given how this story has been building up. In late June 2024, Brad would upload a picture he took with Ethan and Hila Klein of the H3H3 podcast. Now, Ethan and Hila have found themselves in controversy having to do with the Israel and Palestine conflict that I am not going to get into right now, with terminally online political schizos continuing to go at him because of the political brain rot on that side of the internet. It's a giant mess of politics that again I am not going to get into, but what's important here is that Brad's audience are a lot more progressive in nature, and given he built a rather vocal and toxic one, they would start to completely trash on him for daring to take a picture with the two of them. Instead of standing his ground because all he did was take a picture with him, Brad would immediately start to fold to his audience and say how he wanted to meet them despite knowing how some people don't like him online, with him getting a taste of his audience and what he's given to others, a Brad taste if you might, only this time coming from his very own fans themselves. He would fulfill this folding by apologizing for taking a picture with two people some parts of the internet don't like, showing how quick he is to bow to his own audience and their hunger for drama. He would continue to basically grovel at the feet of anybody who was getting mad at him, trying to make himself out to look like a complete dumbass who just wanted to be cool, as if he's somehow a bad person for literally taking a picture with people. A fan would even mention how he's being way too harsh on himself, which is true, as again, all he did was take a picture with these people, showing that there are some sane people in his audience, which is a good thing. Instead of Brad understanding this isn't a big deal to literally anybody except politically brain rot people, he would reply and continue to beat himself up over this as if he committed the nastiest sin somebody can do online, showing just how pathetic he is when he faces the wrath of his own audience. Ethan himself would even respond to this on his Instagram and say he has no issues with Brad or anything like that, saying he was a chill guy and anything's off, saying he even feels sorry that he felt he was forced into this position. Brad would go on to reply to Ethan's messages and state how he doesn't know how to handle this situation going on simply because there are different opinions going on with this very volatile political talking point. Even though I think Brad is a jackass as we've seen prior, I actually started to feel bad for him here because it was very obvious he had no idea how to get out of this situation and so went the groveling apology route in order to quell the vocal minority of his fans, in turn making himself out to look whipped by them in the process. The issue is, despite giving in to his fans' demands, he'd also start to argue with people online in expected Brad taste fashion, even going on to straight up say to another YouTuber named Stardust that she isn't a threat to him because she's so small on his platform, still showing him pulling weight in numbers to bully those he deems below him. This, alongside people seeing him act like a bitch to his fans, started to get a lot of people to trash on the guy because he was frankly making himself out to look like a complete and utter loser with how things are unraveling here. This would all die down pretty quickly, however, as about a week later on July 8th, he would upload a video to his channel basically trying to get people to pity him for being mentally unstable.
And I'd like to set the record straight and say that I was not well. I've not been well over the last handful of years, and a lot of what I've said has been just straight up delusional.
While it's nice that Brad is able to see himself that he can be unstable and delusional at times, given he literally bowed to his audience for just taking a picture with some people, attacked other people because they were smaller creators and knew they couldn't fight back against him, only to now start this pity campaign, frankly felt like somebody trying to get his audience to like him again. It didn't help that right after this frankly overblown situation, he would start to promote his friend Rose Malay and her content on his community tab. And while the Ethan Klein H3 picture situation wasn't anything bad, the Rose Malay stuff is, as Rose has a history in the online political sphere of believing some extremely disgusting things, such as that if somebody is getting raped, they should just let the person do their thing instead of fighting back, which is just insane to think about. There's even this tweet where she talks about older men getting with young women, and the implications of this involving potentially underage women in specific is just so nasty to think about, I'm not even going to get into detail about it. There's also this tweet I found that I think is a bad joke, as none of my research shows her going onto streams to defend human and animal relations, but it still doesn't make her look any better, not one bit. Now this time, instead of just politically brain-rot Twitter users seeing this, it was Brad's entire fanbase from the heart of this madness, as he again posted it on his community tab. And when they saw him promoting Rose, they would immediately start to trash on him because it's pretty insane to promote somebody like that. Especially to an audience that Brad has built up containing many people who have unfortunately been in the very situation that Rose was defending. Now, though the Ethan stuff had no wrongdoing on his end and it was all overblown, Brad would double down and defend promoting Rose on his channel despite her heinous past, going on to bring her very obvious mental health issues into the mix and pin it on others for not trying to actually care about her and her struggle to become a better person. He really would try to push this notion that she's actively changing and improving herself as a person, and all he was trying to do is promote her to help her with that. But what he fails to understand is that someone who has said the things she has said isn't owed a career or even a handful of success. She has to earn the public's trust on her end and fix her own issues and get people to trust her herself instead of somebody else trying to push that. It makes sense why a lot of people don't like her because she was saying some frankly crazy shit. And so it makes sense why people get mad at him, but Brad doesn't seem to be able to grasp that concept as he got himself in yet another situation. Like just going through her past, she was saying some extremely crazy and vile stuff, and with each post I find it more and more shocking that of all the people to be friends with somebody like this, it would be Brad. Here we have exactly that. Eventually, after his entire fanbase eviscerated him, Brad would delete everything having to do with Rose, but he would still take a jab at those going at him in expected Brad taste fashion. Now I want to make it clear to y'all, it's very obvious outside the Ethan Klein situation that Brad has been making boneheaded move after boneheaded move. While it's not the worst thing we've seen on the channel, this was a very big deal for his audience, and on Reddit, the website full of the most brain rot of the brain rot, his fans will start to completely turn on him for being a spineless loser and trying to run away from the situation he got himself in. He even lost the support from his biggest money donator named Skrigal Eagles, and Skrigal wasn't your average fan. He's allegedly donated up to $20,000 and literally got Brad's logo tattooed on his body, meaning that literally the most loyal fan of his was now turning on him. However, even though Brad was facing the wrath of his audience after years of putting him on other people, he could get out of this pretty well if he just played things smart. He would post his official apology for promoting Rose and came to understand why his audience disliked her so much, even if he doubled down initially, but that's besides the point. The point here is that the past few weeks were very clearly stressful on him as he's never been in a situation like this, and now that he recently learned just how toxic his own fanbase can be towards him, one would think he would chill out for a bit and play his cards smart. Well, let's just say that Brad's lack of thinking things out would bite him in the ass once again, turning what was already a stressful summer into something far beyond anything anyone could have ever imagined. On July 15th, just a few days after getting past the Rose situation, Brad would decide for some reason to hop on the H3H3 podcast. Now, as we already know, his audience hates Ethan, and he now knows that given he just dealt with him a few weeks ago. One would think he'd be smart about it and just avoid any associations with him or even talking about him or this subject, but instead he would ignite the fuse once again all on his own accord. The conversation wasn't even anything crazy, as Brad would basically just tell him he let people get into his head and that he's quitting nicotine because he realized that he's very reactionary, which given he's a reaction channel and that's all he's ever done, actually makes good sense. He would also apologize to Ethan for being a coward about everything as well, which even if that's true, that's still a pretty decent move to make for anybody online.
Again, I'm sorry that I betrayed the family, as I'll say, by not standing up for what I actually believe and for honestly, like everyone's saying, being very cowardice.
However, we already know that he lets his audience control him, and when they saw he was still talking, let alone apologizing to Ethan after forcing him into dropping any association with the man, they were not going to let him get away with it. It first started with Brad enlisting all his videos except for two on the channel soon after his appearance on the podcast. This was weird, as Brad had never acted out in this way before, but then it would come out that both his Reddit mods and Discord mods staged a hostile takeover of the Brad Taste brand, even getting him kicked out of his own subreddit and Discord server entirely as it rebranded due to his appearance on the H3 podcast. This was when I got very interested in this story, as this shows just how toxic of a fanbase that Brad had cultivated. Never had I seen the fans themselves kick the content creator out of their own space that they created over talking to someone they simply didn't like. And it was clear that Brad very much likely regretted years of catering to these frankly fucking crazy people as they finally turned on him once and for all. He now had nowhere to go online as well, as he basically shot-talked anybody who said anything about him. And so when this news started to spread online, he would private his Twitter as he tried to figure out what the hell he was gonna do now. Well, a few days after this hostile takeover, Brad would relist his videos, showing that he wasn't ready to throw the towel in yet on his YouTube career. He would come back to Twitter on August 10th with a post showing off some clothes he bought, and on YouTube would ramp things up by thinking about donating all his membership money to a rotating list of charities he and his fanbase would agree on. It's certainly a new start, and after everything he had gone through, it was better than nothing, all things considered. However, just 9 days after coming back to Twitter, his friend Peruko would come out and accuse Brad of charging back money he sent to him and putting them in debt. Now, when looking into this, as far as I can tell, Brad gave them the money to buy an editing software after he hired them to work for him, but after they bought it, he somehow had issues with his bank that caused the chargeback to happen. Peruko would contact him and Brad would give him some money but not pay the full amount because it seemed like a bank or PayPal issue rather than him trying to scam him, only for Peruko to escalate things by heading to Twitter to expose Brad. Honestly, when taking a look into it all, it actually seemed like a bank issue and Peruko really shouldn't have done this to Brad. And after posting a rant video on Twitter where he almost cried a bit going over everything that happened, they would both go on to delete their Twitter pages after people figured it out together. They'd both eventually come back to the site as expected, but it seemed this was yet another overblown situation that Brad didn't do anything bad as far as it looks, but they seemed to move on amicably in the end, so that's good, I suppose. Now, this situation was overblown yet again, and Brad didn't seem to do anything wrong in this case, yet it's become a recurring theme that his audience has completely turned on him, as we've seen. Those same former fans would go on to search for more dirt to use against him, and in that search they would find a semi-recent clip of him begging them to give him $10,000, which is obviously a very big amount of money.
Right now, I need enough money to support my family, and basically I need enough money to last about a month, right? So in total, maybe about 10 grand. With my family and moving and closing off leases, yeah. Like that's like the minimum, right? Right now, let's focus on getting some music things done. I do need your help as a community. I do need financial help in order to make it. All right.
People had issues with this because Brad has gone on to brag about making $300,000 all the way up to October 2023, showing that he's doing a pretty good job for himself simply by reacting to random pieces of music that his audience shows him. His e-begging, despite bragging about making so much money, rubbed a whole lot more people the wrong way, because if there's one thing people don't like, it's someone who has the money still begging for more, especially from those who will never be able to experience the financial security he has. This would become a joke in his fanbase as they would start to make fun of Brad for begging for money despite having some, and so he would start to crack jokes about it himself as the news started to spread around like wildfire in what was left of his community. In his video adjusting my camera, he'd even play a little intro poking fun at this, but again, this is something his audience actually had issues with as no one likes a rich beggar. He would go on to delete his album of the year account around this time as well, and when replying to somebody, he would say it was because the platform is toxic to use, which given himself and his own audience being worse, that sounds like a bit of cope if you ask me personally. Brad would end up live streaming again on August 21st, but towards the very end he would start to have a meltdown about the Peruko stuff as it still clearly upset him. Also, the main person behind the hostile takeover in his Discord server dynamic editor, turns out in that very livestream chat they were trying to get into contact with him again as they hadn't given up on him yet only to get banned, which in this case, given they, took over his Discord server and kicked him out, I don't blame him for banning him one bit. Now, it was very clear that the entire summer had really worn Brad down, as not only did his own audience turn on him all stemming from a really stupid reason initially, he really could not handle them not one bit and was starting to slowly lose his mind. Alongside people finding clips of him being a jackass and promoting Rose Malay, more of his audience would start to turn on him and he would slowly get a reputation of people just waiting to see what the next meltdown would be. This would be the catalyst for fall 2024, as let's just say that the past summer was just the beginning of what was to come. On August 22nd, Brad uploaded a video titled "Reddit Ruined My Life," and it was very obvious that he was not in a good headspace at all and was basically just ranting and putting all the blame on his mental health, which if there's one thing people don't really like, is someone who blames all their issues on their mental health, as most of the time it's a massive cop-out excuse.
To anybody who is basically slowing me down from making mental health progress, slowing down me donating to charity, making it right with people, getting offline and interacting with friends. If you're one of the people who is stopping me from doing this and also telling me that it's for my own good, f you. You, if you're a subscriber, unsubscribe, leave a comment, and I'll happily hide you from the channel. Genuinely, you guys are some of the worst fucking people I've ever met, and I'm glad that I'm going to stop making friends on the internet. Because genuinely, I don't want anything to do with like 99% of you guys. Shout out to the small amount of the audience that actually does like care. But you guys have seen me, who's mentally ill, and have essentially done the fucking worst thing you ever could to someone who's mentally ill. And I no longer feel bad about it, nor am I taking the blame for it, so.
The very next day, he posted this 44-second mashup video, still clearly in a bad mental health space, and the comments will start to clown on him as he's become known as the meltdown guy by this point in time, even by those in his fan base, and they were just clearly here for the show now. 3 days after that, he would post another apology video to his community showing just how deranged he's been acting recently, and given how many times it seems to be happening in the past few months, it was starting to feel like him pulling another cop-out whenever he faced backlash. However, he and Peruka will end up making up after their little situation went down, so maybe, just maybe, Brad was finally getting his shit together here. Yeah, that wouldn't be the case, as on August 31st, Brad would instantly end a livestream saying that he fears for his safety, causing people to wonder what exactly was going on with him now. Someone would reach out to his girlfriend Tina and she would say they're both okay and there's nothing to worry about, and a few days later would confirm he was refunding anyone who sent money to have a song listened to before the abrupt ending. However, on September 6th, he would announce he was going to rehab for addiction, trauma, and anger management, showing that he was trying to at least fix himself.
About 2 months, it's intensive outpatient care, and I'm not going to be uploading, and if I am going to be uploading, it's going to be something, you know, either super familiar or maybe something completely different with DJing.
However, on September 15th, soon after this announcement, it would come out that Tina and Brad broke up with each other, as she would allude to such online, showing that things weren't looking too good in Brad's real life right now. Right after this, Brad would post in private a video basically saying he was now going MIA for as long as he can, showing him acting out emotionally yet again as this news was now out to the public. On September 17th, he would post a really odd video saying that he would be making content while also doing this outpatient rehab program, but watching throughout, you can tell he was acting out of character and more jovial than normal, which had people thinking he was now manic.
You guys ready? This is the best news of all. You will not have to pay a single cent anymore for any entertainment. That's right. Now hear me out. You may be like, Bradley, you're crazy. What? No money? How are you supposed to make money? That's the thing. It's not about the money. It's about the art. You see where I'm going here? Everything has become about the money. And what I'd like to do is take it back to basics. Back to when there was no money. All right? Back to when all we had was our creativity and a platform to share that. So what I'm going to be doing is any streaming, if you want to suggest you want a song in there, be my guest. All right, we're going to be doing some community building, and it's going to be a beautiful thing.
The comments would express concern for him, but he would say he ran this by his parents and a friend and to not worry, showing that some of his fans still cared about his well-being despite everything that had been going on. However, it seemed that Brad was indeed going manic as he would reinstate his Album of the Year account and start to post very odd reviews that read as such, with it becoming more and more clear that he was probably going crazy right now instead of focusing on his rehab. He would continue to act up by doing a quick live stream on his laptop for about 10 minutes, and then on September 19th would announce they kicked him out of rehab on day 1, much to his fans' disappointment. Except, this wouldn't be the case, as he would go on to say that he was doing a little bit of trolling and joking around, and then go on to start manic tweeting about how if he truly was kicked out or not, as people were watching him have this breakdown live. This tweet on screen should be more than enough to describe his mental state at the moment, as he was clearly going through the motions and didn't even realize it. He would eventually get himself under control yet again and apologize for acting out and worrying a lot of people, so at least it wasn't a long multi-day crash out like how some of them tended to be. The next day, Brad would make yet another apology video and admit to crime before he even started recording, saying that he's scared of losing his community after everything that has been going on.
But also a lot of it's like, I care about the community, and I need help. I need to get offline, and I just want some reassurance from some people who care about me that, like, you'll be there when I'm gone, or when I come back, I mean. Because I want to do this the right way, but I'm scared, and I just wanted to ask for a little help and reassurance, and that's all.
He would then private his Twitter account on September 23rd, soon after making this video of his, and on the 25th would admit to abusing Adderall and weed, giving people some specific insight on why he's been acting so crazy in the past couple weeks.
Turns out that getting a prescription from your primary care doctor for Adderall and then abusing it once again to work 16 hours and then smoking weed afterwards is a really fucking bad idea.
Clearly, he couldn't control himself from posting online, but he was at least in a rehab program, so it is what it is, I suppose. Now, in the background, Rose Malay was having her own situations go down as people were hounding her for being a crazy, disgusting person, and would even turn on Brad by bringing up old videos and tweets despite him risking his entire career to prop up her content, again showing that she's still insane despite saying she's supposedly bettering herself. People wouldn't take her seriously because she's shown herself to be a clout shark and nothing more, but she would still try to insert herself into this mess by leaking out old voice messages and saying that she has more to quote-unquote expose him with. It's honestly more of a side plot that doesn't really matter, but I figured it was interesting to show that Rose betrayed the one guy who decided to risk his entire career to help hers get a start over some petty bullshit. Brad would come back to streaming on October 12th and continue on like normal, even going on to say on the 14th that Tina was mooching off him throughout their relationship and that he was giving her $5,000 a month to live off of alongside that. This could be part of the reason why he was being such a beggar, as $5,000 a month ain't no slack, especially for just one person. And to think that Tina was perhaps using him until he started to make less money online is a pretty interesting thing to think about. On October 21st, he would complete his rehab program, showing that things might finally start getting better for him, but then a few days later would post yet another video talking about his issues and such again, showing that there's still a lot more work that needs to be done here. It's worth pointing out that this video in specific is a lot more straightforward and concise than the rest, showing that he's starting to somewhat get control of himself again compared to how it was months earlier. Now, despite streaming and continuing to try and keep his career afloat, it wasn't working well as a lot of Brad's audience simply had moved on, such as this stream he did in late October only getting a total of 6,000 views compared to his usual numbers that were vastly higher before the summer controversy. In fact, by November 25th, exactly a month later after said stream, he was already whining online again about how he isn't doing well mentally and how he ruined his career, and a lot of self-pity and similar statements. Which again, while we get it, the dude has mental issues, it just comes off really pathetic given this is the guy who would instigate fights online all the time until his own audience ate him alive. However, he still seemed to be kicking it good enough on YouTube, as a video going over the worst songs of all time he uploaded in January 2025 would hit the algorithm and get pretty good views, showing that there was still some gas left in the tank here. However, that tank would run out as just a month later on Valentine's Day, Brad would upload a since unlisted video on his second channel saying he relapsed, in which he admits that he's already back to smoking weed again despite trying to quit. Now, Brad doesn't sound exactly the worst while speaking, but just by looking at him, you can tell he's clearly not looking like he's in the best shape, and it was obvious that things were afoot in the real life of Brad Taste here behind the scenes. In fact, he would stop streaming and go back to doing God knows what in his offline life, and so people wondered if he was doing okay or if he was back on his shit again. Now, given that Brad had lost a huge chunk of his audience and that he stopped streaming, there was a market gap that needed to be covered as they had no other channel to flock to, and so commentary YouTuber Lyrics would jump at the opportunity to fill this gap and start uploading regularly on his Liam Donovan channel, eclipsing his original Lyrics channel in popularity within mere months as he dropped that venture entirely and rebranded from his old edgy persona to a typical basic and benign music reactor. Now, this pivot into talking about Lyrics might seem odd and out of place for this video, but the reason I bring it up is because Rose Malay would try to start beef with a dude, even going on to mention his past of very edgy jokes and liking lolicon pictures on Twitter back when he was a minor in a video she made trying to expose him in May 2025. Now, this video would obviously flop as the things Rose is exposing Lyrics for are either already known and forgiven for or come off hollow and hypocritical given she said a lot of things that are far worse than he's ever done. Yet, whenever people bring those up, she expects them to forgive her because she supposedly changed. Yet Lyrics, for some reason, is the exception to the very logic she uses to defend herself with. It's obvious she was just trying to start shit with a guy because she was jealous he was able to get his music reaction career going very quickly compared to hers never gaining any traction, period. And so they would argue about it on a stream with Rose taking the L as her jig was up.
annoyed by this because you completely cut the context, acting as if I was making fun of you for being for your trauma or being raped in the past, when I wasn't. What I was making these jokes about is you saying consent is stupid, is natural and necessary for a happy and healthy society. Why is the modern world so miserable? Because are treated as criminals instead of they're cherished for their masculinity. Feminism, I wish men weren't so afraid of me.
Drag you down.
Yes.
I mean, I made that video because, like I said, I feel like the way that people treat me is unfair. And so, like, why am I going to give you courtesy? Why am I going to assume the best when I feel like nobody assumed the best out of me? Like, everyone assumed the worst out of me.
Wait. You just said, since everybody assumed the worst out of you, why would you grant me any good charity? So you're just going to repeat the cycle onto someone else? So you're mad about how you were treated, so you're going to treat other people and me the same way that you were poorly treated? What the f*** is wrong with you? What the f*** did you just say? God, okay, you need help, man. Jesus Christ. Hello? My phone died. That is a coincidence for the lifetime. Holy shit.
I know this isn't relevant to the Brad stuff, but I wanted to talk about it in a video and finally had a reason to do so here, so there you have it. Now, Brad was still repurposing old streams into videos to little success, and so by summer 2025, it seemed that he was destined to become yet another channel that fell off and that he was officially a has-been. However, he would switch things up as on July 25th, 2025, he would post a since-deleted 30-minute video simply titled SI of him back on his shit and crashing out to his audience again. It's an extremely bizarre watch, as you can tell by the way he looks and acts that he was not in the right mental space at all. And he goes on to talk about things like how he stopped streaming about 4 months ago and now lives with his parents only watching movies all day long, even saying he tried to commit with vodka and pills a few months back but survived. However, the most interesting part here was revealing that he was arrested for domestic assault during the whole H3 mess that happened a year ago, meaning that he just admitted to assaulting his ex Tina on a whim in his state of utter mania.
You know, people are talking about it. I'm a hot topic. And my partner is freaking out because she's involved. You know, she's a part of the whole equation. And I start trying to, you know, say things to fix it. And when I try to help, it basically results in her screaming and crying that things are getting worse and that it's all my fault. So I'm trying to, you know, keep my job. It became me panicking, trying to fix it, and her basically getting angry at me trying to fix it. I'd say that everything reached an apex when she recorded me in my house, yelling at her through the door. I was fucking pissed. I was just like mad because I'm trying to fucking figure everything out in like an impossible situation, you know, trying to get things back to normal so that like we could live a normal fucking life. And she repays me by recording me in my house without my knowledge. She sends it to my parents. She sends it to friends. She sends it to people who are associated with Hive Mind. Yeah, and it's the biggest betrayal I've ever felt. I remember I was like doing a stream and then I left. I go to the kitchen. I see her sitting on the couch like screaming and crying, and I'm pissed off. Like, because like I'm trying to focus, you know, to get work done. And it felt like she was interrupting that. Now, here's the thing. Yeah, my response to her crying was screaming at her. which was bad, but my justification was I am streaming right now. I can't have you like screaming and crying like in the house. You know, I told her to go basically stay with her mother, who lived like 5 minutes away. Instead of doing that, she got me kicked. Okay, so I'm like doing this thing where I'm like, you need to go to your mom's house. She's like, you know, fuck you. This is my house too. And I'm like, I pay all the bills. This is all important. This is all important. Trust me. I pay the bills for this entire place. You know, like I'm keeping it up. You don't contribute shit to the equation. Get out. She calls the cops on me and they have me arrested for domestic violence. That is really where the story all starts. Like, you know, I'm in a jail cell. This was like literally, there's like a clip of me that's like me talking about how I don't feel safe in my home. And then like an hour later, I'm in jail. You know? It's crazy. And I don't want to fucking say any of this. I don't want to talk about this. It makes me look bad. But I'm also now realizing that I don't really care because that's what happened. Those are, you know, that's what I did. These are the choices I made. Anyways, yeah, so once that happens, the relationship is over. I'm just like...
Tina herself would notably comment a vague threat his way seeing her name brought up in this mess, and given that he just admitted to domestic assault, it seemed that things are heating up yet again in the Brad Taste universe here. Peruka would even reveal that they knew about this for a while now and asked him to take down the videos they were featured in, only for Brad to not do so, showing that this had been kept under wraps pretty well up until he decided to crash out and make a video revealing all this information in his state of delusion. Tina would even start to talk in a streaming chat about how she's gathering up info, and on Twitter would say she has stuff dated back as far as 2019, even revealing tidbits like how he was yelling in her face instead of through a door and that she doesn't want to cause any harm, showing that she still holds some sort of care for the guy despite what he put her through. Brad would private his video saying he got himself in more controversy all due to his own actions, and so he'd make a 3-minute since unlisted follow-up basically saying that he regrets making the video and dragging Tina into this mess and is reaping what he sowed, to be honest, saying that he will be disappearing off the internet for a year seeing he's a complete screw-up of a person. Someone would end up hacking into his Rate Your Music account and post some funny comments before that got nuked as well, which I thought was pretty funny. Lil Mosquito Disease, the head of Flex Entertainment, a small music label and community that Brad was a part of, would even head to his old former Discord server and tell everyone he's a piece of shit and people's suspicions last year were true. While it's not surprising seeing that he dropped the dude from Flex the moment his original upload came out, it's just sad because these people wanted to give him another chance only for him to throw it all away in his drunken stupor that he decided to record and upload for the world to see. Brad's editor Space Ashes would officially call it quits as the news spread around online. Anthony Fantano would clown on the guy as well, as seen by his Twitter reply, and Tina would continue to gather evidence to use for her eventual post on the dude. However, in a reply to a rather schizo user on Brad's subreddit page trying to antagonize Tina for not posting any evidence yet, she would reveal she actually talked to Brad and was now planning to not follow through and exposing the guy as she still held some sort of care for him and felt it would be cruel to do so. She would officially confirm so on July 29th, just 4 days after this mess started, meaning that those who wanted to listen to that recording she has were not going to see it as she just wanted to move on with their life after going through all this mess with Brad. Now honestly, when I saw this news, I completely understood where Tina was coming from, as the stuff that Brad put her through was over a year ago now and she seemed to be doing okay for herself now. While I'm sure part of her was relieved that the public now knew what she went through in her last days with Brad, she very clearly wanted nothing to do with the drama hounds who were trying to force her into involving herself in this mess she wanted nothing to do with to begin with. It seemed that while Brad's career was officially over that we weren't going to get the audio she recorded, and so people would move on a bit disappointed, albeit satisfied things were now over. Except Brad, in his totally sane and solid state of mind, would decide to make a response video titled My Statement on August 5th just a week later. When I tell you things are only going to get worse from here onwards, I truly mean it, as it's just 12 minutes of nonsensical rambling and trying to say Tina was also bad apparently, but he never abused her totally because they weren't a match for each other. It was truly the prime example of somebody just rambling off the cuff and ruining what little fancy I left, if any at this point, to be honest.
This is me literally saying we are both victims of each other, you know, and that the relationship like dissolved in a way that that I thought felt extremely unfair, but I can see like why she was as terrified as she was. But the reality is, once again, like, this is not a problem around people who are like me. It just happens to be the circle I have, you know? All the people who are around me who are just like tuned differently, you know what I mean? And I did hurt them, but like, once again, I didn't mean to hurt anybody. So like, it really isn't, you know, not my fault as much as it is, you know? Like, I don't know. Whatever. Hopefully this clears it up, but knowing the internet probably won't, and I don't really care. Sorry for not keeping up with the 2-year rule, but I don't know, maybe I just was like I guess I could have waited a little longer. I'm probably still taking a break, but I'm making music like all day. Like, I'm just in the studio, dude, creating crazy stuff. Listen to this, all right? All right, I gotta click this. Video unavailable. Well, guess you'll have to wait till next time. Peace.
He'd private the video within the hour after coming back to his senses, but the damage was done already and there was no point of return now. Things would kick off with Tina leaking a DM of Brad suicide baiting and basically holding her hostage, showing that he really was abusing her and managed to keep it under wraps for a lot longer than one would think given how he's like. It would only get worse as she would end up leaking the audio clip she took when he was yelling at her with space ashes, making it known in his old Discord server, and a mod of his YouTube channel will end up using their powers to upload a video and link the audio in the description to spread the awareness as far and wide as quickly as they could. The comments are pretty bad and you can tell what little fans he had left were completely done with him, so why don't we take a listen ourselves and see just how bad it really is.
So, if
Without being a sarcastic bitch, look at me in the fucking eyes and tell me the truth.
So I have
In the eyes, Tina.
accidentally lied to you before. Well, I have like mistakenly given you
Tina.
Sorry, I have mistakenly given you incorrect information, and I don't mistakenly giving incorrect information is not lying, and I am certain.
So that's not an example then. Try again.
You are not
I'm
entitled.
gonna call the police.
Yeah,
I will get you out of here.
Both
I
of-
will make a story up. I will get you out of here,
both
Tina.
of our names are on the lease, so you will not be doing that. And
I will say my partner has been emotionally abusive and I've asked her to leave many times. And despite the fact that I have no support system, she has refused to leave and has continued to emotionally abuse me. I need her to get out for at least a day. I need space and she refuses. Can you please escort my partner somewhere else so that I can have some mental peace? That's
Right.
what I'm going to tell them.
that's so.
I'm going to call them.
Okay.
You done? And you will destroy me.
I just want
You will do anything
I just
it
want to be
takes,
able to
Tina.
think quietly while I brush my dogs. I just want to be able to quietly reflect on my life while I brush my dogs without you asking what I'm thinking about and prying it out of me and thinking you're entitled to know what I'm thinking about. You're not.
I'm not even your partner, Tina.
You're not treating me like a partner.
You're looking around looking for excuses, Tina. I literally am watching your body
I
language.
can't look in your
You look like one of
eyes.
those freaks on the fucking interrogation videos.
I can't look in your
Every single thing you're doing is full of shit. You're literally acting like the fucking criminals there, Tina. Like every action. I could record it. And it would be like, Tina's looking to the left while immediately, oh, he asks a question and her eyes are moving around as she's looking quickly for
I
an
have
answer.
trouble with eye
because she has no,
contact.
oh no, you don't,
Yes,
Tina.
I do.
You are a lying, manipulative person.
I have trouble.
And you need to get out of my house.
I have trouble with eye contact. I do.
I am going to call the cops if you don't stop lying to me, Tina. Right now. This is it. You are one of my abusers, so I can damn f***ing right do that to you. I can kick you the f*** out of here for what the f*** you've done to me. You've destroyed me.
What? How? All I've ever wanted to do is support.
Stop lying to me for once. Look at me in the eyes and stop lying to me. Stop being such a wimp.
All I've ever
Look at me and accept what you have done to me. Do you see what I've become? You've killed me. You promised me everything. You lied to me.
What did I promise?
Look at me in the f***ing eyes and say that again. Look at me. Tell me.
Don't do it. Don't.
You're Rhonda. Like,
Don't.
You are evil. Like, you're evil.
I don't.
Yeah, it was just as bad as I was expecting it to be. And in a weird way, I'm both shocked and not shocked at the same time, as while most of the time when someone who acts unhinged as Brad tends to find themselves in situations like this, don't really expect it to happen until you see it for yourself. Now, Rose Millay would of course jump on a hate train against Brad because she's a clout shark who just wants attention and leak various DMs at him in a video she made, but in this case she actually provides something useful for once, with that being an unlisted video of Brad freestyling about his former relationship with Tina. It's pretty bad to be honest, bro is clearly not fit for this style of music, but there are some interesting lyrics strewn about that I'll let you take a listen for yourself after going through the whole thing.
Yeah, bad bitch, met her at Hot Topic. Yeah, whoa, grabbed her ass, she told me to stop it. Hey, it's a bad time to bring this up, man, but this is real stuff that happened, and I ain't happened, alright? That just happened to be my future wife. She just don't know it yet. Man, I say these things online, you know I finna sweat. The bad bitch needs to pipe down, so what do? Oh, simply I yell at her. That's just what I do. Oh, I'm just a messenger. Look, a true story. I was yelling at the bitch. Yeah, what she do for me? Well, ruined my life. Look how it's all falling down. I must be a completely different guy. Huh. Wow. It's like I didn't even try to do good in this world. I just beat up her. Yeah, that's all it is. Beat her so hard, man, I didn't want to stop. I was so mad when she stitched to the couch. Man, took too many years of my life. Thought she would be my wife. Man, this just isn't quite right.
Yeah, he was partially venting about his former relationship and revealing how she was mad and called the police on him and how he initially wanted to marry her before things went south, showing that he still had all this on his mind, which really wasn't shocking to be honest. Rodney Radke will also end up chiming in, seeing one of his ops getting smoked on the timeline, showing all these various side plots coming full circle once again. The video of Brad rapping would gain a lot of traction in the music reactor sphere, so much in fact it would actually go trending on Genius at number 52 in the rap category, showing that a whole lot of people, and a lot more than people expected, were keeping tabs of the ongoing situation. Somebody named Purple Perry Gaming would even be able to get Tina into an interview on August 8th, in which she also reveals a lot of things like how he quit weed in August 2021 because he was addicted and would start to act irrational and unable to control his emotions, only to relapse in June 2024 after wanting to smoke with her and friends in LA and then getting addicted again after the H3 shit went down a few weeks later. She would try to take care of him as she saw him spiraling down again and again, but he was already back at his old nasty habits, and would then get into the nitty gritty on what happened the night he was arrested. It's nothing worth going into deep detail here today, but the most interesting part is saying how after all this at an Airbnb with friends that she and Brad got into it, in which he continued to abuse her in front of said friends, showing that he was officially back on his shit.
It was in Michigan. We were visiting our friends in Detroit actually, and this was the first time that we had been there visiting them while he was on weed, and they actually witnessed him being. He was so used to treating me like shit that he didn't even realize that like other people would be picking up on it. So he was yelling at me in front of our friends, making them super uncomfortable. There was after this situation with the Airbnb, which I kind of explained in the text messages to him. I had to go stay at a friend's house that night, and that friend was the first person in my life to tell me that I was experiencing abuse.
Those leaked DMs talking to him about what he did to her and how her hand hurts only for him to basically blow her off was insane to read. And in fact, she would reveal that he was yelling at her so badly, the neighboring Airbnb below them messaged asking if everything was alright, showing that he was treating her so badly they could hear him through the walls. The very next day, Brad would upload yet another 3-minute YouTube video despite saying he'll be staying offline, in which he basically just rambles again while saying he's given up on his YouTube career.
I just want to make this video because this is over now. I have nothing else to say. I'm just saying I'm really glad she put out the video, because the idea of I'm being blackmailed is finally out of my head. And I think that she knew that, because she, again, is really smart. she gets like lots of help mentally. Like, she is very clear-headed, you know? And what she did helped me, you know, tremendously. And I think that I'm going to be using electronic devices like significantly less. Yeah, she was a victim of that. Absolutely. And right now she is getting the support that she deserves. And again, if you're just hate watching this, she is in a horrible situation right now. She can't catch a break. And I hate that I'm contributing to that.
I've calmed down a little bit and I've returned. Yeah. And what I felt during that time period was real. The pain I felt was real, but I misguided it towards her. And she has every right to feel as hurt as she does. And the internet has every right to be as pissed off at me as they are. I will do better. Goodbye.
He would delete it within 30 minutes after posting, but people already archived it. And given how his attitude was, while it was clear he was not in the right headspace again, this constant cycle of using excuses to justify being mentally ill wasn't working anymore, as the writing was on the wall. A former friend named ARTV would end up posting a video talking about things from his point of view, saying how Brad is just a straight up asshole and revealing he had a gambling addiction and paid $4K from a handjob from a chick and cheated on Tina in the process. But the most interesting part was that he revealed Brad made this giant list of tasks for Tina to do around the house and basically boss her around. Which, while I've seen examples of people having certain tasks they stick to or alternate between, Brad basically wanted Tina to do literally everything and take care of him while he just sat on his computer streaming all day. I mean, this part about how he never bought any clothes when he needed to because they didn't fit him anymore and Tina had to do it was nuts to read. Like, dude, there's having clothes that continue to fit and not buying anymore because you don't need to. But like, he couldn't even be fucked to buy new clothes after his old stuff straight up stopped fitting him. That's just insane to me. Brad even tried to reach out to ARTV to make things right between the two, only for the dude to leak this all out to the public and basically saying hell no. And while I find it virtue signaling to air this all out for internet brownie points instead of just keeping it private or at least between friends only, it shows that Brad is still trying to get back into the good graces of people who have understandably left him behind and have no wishes to rebuild that bridge anytime soon. You know, when writing up this story back a few months ago, I thought that Brad would be able to get his career back after the H3 situation, but in a weird way, this event was a catalyst for his incoming future. If you remember, Tina said that Brad got addicted to weed again after the H3 shit went down, and how when he first quit, he did it because he started acting irrational and unstable, and that's exactly how he acted in the fallout from the H3 stuff. It also led to him to start to abuse Tina as he lost control of himself again, and in turn, while it was kept under wraps because those who knew him understood the guy was just not mentally sane, and revealing this info publicly was cruel in their eyes, he became his own enemy as he was the one who revealed this himself to the public a year later and in turn officially ruined his entire career. It's honestly pretty sad because you can very clearly tell the dude is mentally ill and is addicted to what we know as at least weed and assumably alcohol as well. And in turn, this cocktail of issues led to Brad throwing away his entire career because he lost control of himself again. On top of that, he had one of the easiest careers a person could have on the internet. He was literally just reacting to music and that was it. Anybody could do this online. I can do this online if I wanted to, but he threw it all away because he couldn't control his bad habits. You could really see it whenever he would upload a video and delete it hours or even minutes later after coming to his senses again, and the nonchalant and rambly way he would talk about things in general in those uploads. And by this point, it's clear he's just not meant for making content online anymore. What's interesting to think about though is that even before getting addicted to weed again, Brad was still kind of a piece of shit, as if you remember, he was harassing and sending his audience after people he didn't like with Jax, and even tried to poison the well with Tina initially way back in October 2024 as he implied she was mooching off him for $5,000 a month when they actually both agreed to that, as he would admit so in one of his summer 2025 rambling videos, showing his chain of manipulation is just part of him as a person. The addiction just made him more erratic, unpredictable, and uncontrollable. In fact, it was clear to me that he at least enjoyed the power he got from being an online figure, hence doing these very clearly shitty things to other people and was very clearly getting enjoyment out of it. As we know, once his audience turned on him, he was tucking his tail and crashing out because he couldn't handle the heat coming his way despite dishing it out to others. It's a whole mix of emotions for me because almost every single thing that Brad got himself into was because of him being a shitty person to people and being self-destructive in an egotistical way. Like how he started beef with Kiwi Farms because he thought he was invincible and untouchable to any haters of his. He could have controlled himself and not gotten himself in all these bad situations, but his egotistical and antagonistic nature and a lack of self-control became the catalyst for his future. It's just that the event itself was not the typical one you would expect to kick things off to begin with. Shout out to my channel members for helping support my content, and shout out to my bestie tier members Wrathwollen, Nami, Cody, Laura Hertzman, Cheems, Daniel, Mystical GB, Hyper aka V, and Trendy Dragon. Go check out my Patreon and YouTube memberships if you want to support me yourself in the description below, and I hope you join as soon as you can. I don't really know how to end this because Brad is a really pitiful man even if he's done messed up things to Tina and other people, because you can tell a lot of it stems from substance abuse and mental illness, and it's unfortunately an all too common thing that I've seen again and again in life where it's just hard to feel anything except a weird sense of jaded sadness even if I believe he's still a piece of shit to some levels. He reminds me a bit of Boogie 2988 or Wings of Redemption where they act like pieces of shit all the time, except I don't think that Brad has reached their levels just yet. However, if he continues to act like this online, he certainly will because he's going down the same exact path for those who know their stories. And even though in a fucked up way it'd be entertaining to see that happen, I tend to root in the favor of people most of the time because it usually sucks seeing them get wrapped up in all this shit, even if they arguably deserve it. I do wish for the dude to get the proper help he needs instead of continuing down this path before it's too late, and maybe losing his YouTube career might be the wake-up call that he needs to take a step back and get his life back on track.